Good afternoon and welcome to our session today on Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence. This is going to be a great session for those of you who are interested in the Blue Ribbon Schools process, learning a little bit more about how to become a Blue Ribbon School, as well as what does the process actually look like. For many of you, been on an earlier session where our president and founder, Bart Thiel, explain a little bit about the history of the process. Our session this afternoon is going to delve into a little bit more about what you can expect when you are going through the process and a little bit deeper into each of the components of Blue Ribbon Schools. A little bit. My name is Jane Elsperman, and it is truly my honor and privilege to be with you. I was a principal for 25 years. I've been in education for 40 years. And during my time as a school administrator, I worked at the elementary, middle, and high school level. I was blessed with being the 2015 National Principal of the Year through NASSP. I also was honored by the state of Florida. Most importantly, I have been married to my husband, David, for 43 years. We have two wonderful daughters who have given us 5 amazing grandsons. In my current work as a leadership development consultant, every day when I work, I really think about those 5 grandsons that I have, and I think about the tremendous commitment that we have, educators, to ensuring that every school has the environment and the opportunity for each student to exceed their own perceived potential. And that's what I go into my work with every single day. What can I do to support the schools that I work with? Because in every school, knowing that we work in this arena of public trust, the public trusts us that we're going to take care of their children every day and that we're going to do the best. So what can I do in order to support the schools that I work with to ensure that we are in fact giving every child, whether it's your personal child, your neighbor, your godchild, or the children in your classroom, what are we doing to make sure that we're giving every child the best? And I believe strongly that the foundation of Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence does just that. When you take a look at the Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence, you see these 9 foundational principles, those things that need to be in place for schools to achieve the most that they can for every student in their schools. I'm going to spend some time going into each one of these foundational principles so that you can get an understand of their significance in the Blue Ribbon process, but also begin to think about whether you're a teacher, whether you're a principal or a district level administrator, what are those things that we have in already that demonstrate these 9 elements. So let's look at the first one, student focus and support. When we think about student focus and support, what we look for in Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence is that vision and mission. And not just the words that are on a website, not just the words that someone might have in a classroom or they might have on a trailer in a newsletter, but is the vision and mission, is it visible in the classroom in terms of the work that we do? Is everybody staying on mission? Do we have a vision that is far reaching, that allows the school to strive for something bigger than themselves? When we think about Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence, we think about those schools that are demonstrating the highest components of excellence that we would want to see in a school. It's one thing for us to look at our schools in the perspective of how we look in our district or in our community or in our state. But when you aspire to become a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, you are now looking at how does my school compare to the highest performing schools, not just in our nation, but globally. So we're looking at our school through a whole different lens. How does our school measure up to those schools that have the most outstanding performance and are doing the best that they can for each of the children that are attached to that school? So the first thing we look at is student focus and support, that vision, that mission. What do we have foundationally that let everybody in the school community know what it is that we're working towards? The second element in Blue Ribbon Schools is that that school culture and organization. And when we look at that, it's about what does the school look like and feel like. When we think about culture, we think about the way that we do things. When we think about our climate, we think about how does our school make people feel. And so when we think about that, we look at things like what is the relationships between students and teachers, between teachers and students, between teachers and each other. What about the relationships that students have with each other? Are the students kind to one another? Are they supportive of one another? What are those things that make that school culture a positive place, a place that draws students to that school community? What makes parents want to send their child to your school? So we're looking at all of those things, your processes, your procedure, and those things that you do that create that sense of community, that sense of this is a great place for students to learn and for teachers to work. So those are the things that we're looking for in school culture and organization. So it's that big piece. It's what holds us all together. The next element that we're looking for in Blue Ribbon Schools is that foundation. Are there challenging standards and curriculum? Are the schools teaching the standards that state or that school district subscribes to? So if it's a state, we're looking at are those state standards taught to the grade level or course level rigor? We look specifically at that each of the standards in that state, and we look at those verbs. We look to make sure that we're not just teaching addition, but we're making sure that if we're teaching addition of decimals, or if we're teaching addition in algebraic equations, whatever it happens to be, we make sure that the standards and the curriculum are matching the rigor of the standards. We look at the instructional materials that are used to make sure that they are supporting the curriculum. We look at making sure that the students understand the standards, that they are owning them, and that there is that within that culture that the students are empowered to really own those standards and be able to do what they need to do in order to demonstrate success. This is, for me, is one of the most important standards besides the culture, because our mission in education is to ensure that students are successful, that they are ready for one of those 3 E's when they graduate, either enrollment in future education, enlistment in the military, or employment in our communities. So what are we doing to make sure that those standards and curriculum are making that possible? In secondary schools, we even look at those career and technical courses. Are we making sure that those career and technical courses have the rigor that will allow students to be able to be successful in the work environment upon graduation? That we can't have, if we just have challenging standards and curriculum and we do not have active teaching and learning, we know that we're not going to be able to fulfill that mission of helping all of our students be successful. So we're looking for active teaching and learning. And and sometimes this can be a misnomer, because when we're looking for active teaching and learning, we're really looking for what are those plans that the teachers put in place that are encouraging the students to own the standards and produce the learning that's required for mastering those standards. So what is it that the teacher has planned? Is there a link between that particular activity and the standard, and ultimately student mastery of that standard? So we're looking at how the resources that the school has, but more importantly, how are those resources being used by students in the school? So we're looking for things like, is the type of collaboration, and whether we're doing this hybrid, virtual, or face-to-face, what type of collaboration do we have with students? What is it that the students are required to produce? What does that look like? So we're looking for those artifacts, and because we are in a really interesting time, because we have the opportunity to be able to interact with students, whether they are face-to-face or whether they're in a remote setting. What is it that the students are doing that's promoting that learning that we want to take place in every single school? The next thing that we look at is, and this has been especially evident now that we have in so many places, we've either gone to a remote learning environment, or we're utilizing remote learning as one of those resources that we do in a hybrid or even in our face-to-face schools. So how are we integrating technology? It's not just, do all of the students have a Chromebook or an iPad, but it is that deliberate use of technology in a way that enhances student learning. So we're looking at what are those things that the school has in place that allow students to seamlessly use technology to demonstrate their mastery of the standards. This particular standard has been here. I think Bart shared that 20 years ago he added the standard because he recognized the importance. Well, now here we are in 2020, and technology has become a tremendous part of what we need to be able to access in order to be able to reach all of our students. So how are we using technology? How are we deploying it? How do students have access to it? What are those resources that students are being directed to in order to be able to maximize their use of technology? So whether we are coming in and supporting a Blue Ribbon School either virtually or face-to-face, we're looking at all aspects of how is technology used for your students to be able to learn. And teachers play such a big part in this, because that teacher comfort level, the professional development that's been provided to the teachers in order to be able to support this is really critical now to the success of so many of our students who are not in our buildings learning, but they are remote, and we have to be able to ensure that they're successful. As I mentioned, that importance of that support for the teachers, one of the foundational elements of Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence is that professional community. What are teachers doing to collaborate? What are teachers doing in order to make sure that they are staying on top of their game, that they are able to reach students in a way that allows them to be successful? So we look at those opportunities that we know the best schools in not just our nation, but across the world, the best schools have robust professional development opportunities for their teachers. The best schools in our nation are the schools where the teachers are just as much a learner as the students. We find in schools where the teachers think that that they've got it and they are not willing to learn and develop themselves, they're not going to be as successful as those schools where teachers are constantly striving to improve their craft and to work together to leverage that body of knowledge that we know is in every single building. And what are they doing to make sure that they are leveraging it so that all teachers have access to that knowledge? There's a great philosopher by the name of Jim Rohn, and what he says is we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And I love that quote by him because it addresses this particular element of Blue Ribbon Schools so much. In our school communities, we are only going to be the best of the average that we have. So what are we doing as a school community to drive our average up? What are we doing to make sure that we're doing that opportunity, we're taking advantage of that opportunity, recognizing the leadership that we have among our teachers and giving teachers the opportunities to lead and to be recognized for the things that they are doing for our students in our school community. So that's another one of our foundational elements. We also recognize that leadership is extremely important. The leadership that's within the building in terms of our teacher leaders, but more important, our school-based leaders. That principal visible? Is he dynamic? Is that principal leading the learning on that campus? What is the school leadership doing to constantly strive for excellence? What are those that have been put in place and are supported by the school leadership? What does that look like in your school community? And that also includes the leaders' involvement with parents, with students, with community. What are we doing to ensure that we have the best leaders in each of our schools that are striving towards the success of in that school community? So really looking at what does leadership look like in that building, and what are those things that we can look at that will allow us to really tap into the potential that leadership has to change the trajectory of a school. We also take a look at that school and family community partnership. What is the school doing to involve parents? And I know this is really difficult right now because for many schools, you're in a position this year that you've never been in. For many of our schools, parents aren't allowed on campus because we are concerned about making sure that we do everything to minimize the risk of spreading COVID-19. So, and we don't have the volunteers, the community members on our campuses like many of us have had in the past. But the opportunities go beyond just physically being in the building. What is the opportunity for parents to interact with teachers? This has taken a tremendous change for many of us because now a lot of our communication members are virtual. But there have been a lot of creative things that we've seen in schools where community members have zoomed in and been part of an instructional activity, or they have been able to contribute in some way. But we're looking for what are those things that we have been able to reach out, even in these very challenging times, to really involve our families and communities in the work that we're doing in our school through communication, through opportunities, through just letting them know what they can do to support us, even though for many schools, they still physically on their campuses. So what does that look like in a school? And because those of us that work here and support the work of Blue Ribbon Schools, we know that it looks very, very different. We're on campuses every day, so we know it looks very different. But how are we still fostering, creating opportunities so that people who are not students can feel connected to our schools? So what are we doing to make that happen? And then the last thing we look at are those indicators of excellence. What are those things? What are those? How do we measure excellence? So we look at things like attendance, and doesn't attendance look different now? We look at what does attendance look like with the different shifts that we've had to use when students, their attendance may be the completion of work or assignments because physically they're not in the building. We know that for many of our schools and most of the states in our country, there were no standardized tests given last year. But what are those other measures that we can look at, that you're looking at right now, to determine how are our students performing? How can I tell whether or not our students are performing better than last year? What does that tell us if we know that there was a period of most of us gave up an entire quarter last year where students were not on campus. So what are we doing to measure what that looks like so that we can determine the impact that we've had with our students this year? And many schools have come up with really creative ways that they have looked at what was the student proficiency when they came in, and what is the proficiency now, and how are we measuring that so we can determine the impact that we're having on students this year. We look at schools who have exceeded those general proficiency levels, but we also look for teachers and schools who have demonstrated growth, because for many of our students it isn't about being that they may not be the highest performing students, but are we impacting student growth on an individual and school basis? So what are we doing? Is our school better than it was 2 years ago? And we know that we're taking this tremendous challenge that we have with COVID. We're taking that into consideration, but we're also looking at how are we measuring that our students are successful. So we look at any information that you have, any data that will allow us to be able to give you feedback on how your school is doing compared to other schools nationally that do demonstrate the excellence that is expected in a Blue Ribbon school. So now that we've gone through those 9 foundational elements, those are the things that we're looking at when we come in. How do you go through the process? Where do you start? And then what happens once you start the process? So it's a pretty simple process. There is an application, and you can go to the Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence website, and you can apply to become part of this Blue Ribbon journey. Because when you apply to be considered as a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, what you are committing to is a very reflective process where you look at how am I doing as a school compared to other schools and compared to myself. Have I been able to support my school through tremendous change, and they have grown in ability to service the needs of our students, and what does that look like? So the first part is you take on that reflective opportunity to look at your school, and as Bart Thiel mentioned earlier, we look at individual schools. We'll apply for us to support them in this reflective journey. But we have entire districts that say, you know what, I want to that our district has the opportunity to be one of the most outstanding districts in the nation, and I'd like to be a part of the Blue Ribbon process in order to get our schools where they need to be. So the application process is very, very simple. And then the first thing that happens is there are surveys distributed to administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, and students. And those surveys have 100+ items on them that specifically deal with those 9 foundational elements that I described at the beginning of this session. So where do we stand in each of those items? The administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, and students all get the same question when they're all asked the same question. But there are some questions that are not asked of parents that are asked of students, because there are some things that parents would not have as much knowledge of as the students would have. The same thing with teachers and support staff. So each of these different versions are customized for that particular stakeholder group. So we have these 5 different versions, and everybody in the school community has access to them. Everybody's given an individual code. That code, we don't know who gets what code. It is absolutely confidential. Anything that you respond to in this survey, we have no way of identifying who it is that has responded to the survey. So the surveys go out, and the school determines how long they would like the survey kept open so that everyone has an opportunity to respond. This can be done if you're currently in a situation where everyone on your school campus is virtual. You can certainly send those codes out, and folks can go ahead and they can complete the survey. So the surveys go out, and then they come back in, and we collect all of that data so that we can share it with the school community. And then the next thing that happens is that there's a site visit. One of the assessors, and Bart Thiel described the assessors. The assessors are experts in school improvement and excellence in schools. They've all either been a national Blue Ribbon School principal, they've been a Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence principal, they've been recognized as a state principal of the year, national principal of the year. All of the assessors are of the highest quality. We have assessors that have worked for the Department of Education, the National Department of Education, in the Blue Ribbon process. So we really have a team of experts that come in, and our team of experts, the assessors that are assigned to you, you can be assured that regardless of which assessor comes to your building, you're going to get someone who is calibrated with all of the other assessors. If I come to your building, it would be no different than another assessor coming to your building, because we have all calibrated on these 9 foundational elements. So regardless of who comes to your building, they're going to see the active teaching and learning through the same lens, through the Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, because we know that our folks that are going through the Blue Ribbon process, they deserve to know that everyone is going to be given feedback based on the Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence framework, not from an individual assessor's point of view. So what we do is we come to a school and we'll do a walkthrough. We will walk through with the school principal. We'll go into every single learning environment, and now it's quite different. I've been on school visits where I have actually been in a classroom where there are no students, but there's a lot of active teaching and learning because the teacher is teaching online. We're able to give feedback on that just as if we were in a classroom with students. We're very respectful of the fact that we know that this point in time, it's very difficult for people to bring people into their building, and so we're respectful of whatever the school and district restrictions are. Most of the time, we come in and now we have masks, we have shields, we are protecting ourselves as well as the children, and we abide by all of the district codes with regard to having on-site visits. But whether you're teaching virtual, on-site, or hybrid, we're able to do a school visit. We also have 3 focus groups. Now, back before March of 2020, we conducted all of our focus groups on campus. But now, because we are accustomed to working in a remote environment, we can do your parent, your student, and your teacher focus groups. We can do it virtually. We can do it through Zoom. Earlier this week, I did a focus group with parents, teachers, and students via Zoom, and I have focus groups scheduled for next week as well with schools that are going through the process. So we can do these visits prior to actually coming onto your school campus. The other thing that we do is traditionally, before March of 2020, we would do our exit visit there on campus before we left. But now we recognize that for many of you, it's important that we limit our contact with the school. So we can do the exit session either on campus there, or we can certainly do it via Zoom with the principal and the leadership group at a date after the school visit. So once we have the surveys, we look at everything from the perspective of this is what your school community has said about your school, and we look for evidence of that. The school visit, the purpose of the school visit is to clarify all of the stakeholders have said on the survey, just to clarify so that we understand what each of your stakeholders mean by their response to the survey. So we look at it collectively, and that's all we're there is to basically validate the surveys that your school community have completed. And then we come up with a plan of action. We look at what do we need to do in order to help with the development of this school in order to become a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. So we go through and we help the school leadership team develop a plan of action, and then we set up a timeline for documenting those standards that the school has determined that they wanted to put additional work into. And then at the conclusion of this, after we've had the input from all of the stakeholder group, the assessor spending time with the school, working with the school, documenting standards, doing professional development with the school as needed, then we look forward to the opportunity to recognize the schools in light of where they stand now in terms of schools, the schools throughout the country. So let's take a look at what that site visit looks like. When we are on the school site visit, and again, this can occur virtually. It can be done in a hybrid model, or it can be done on site. But we look at all of these things, and we also review data. We look at 3 years worth of data. We look at discipline data, attendance data, academic data, anything that you are, any numbers that you collect, we want to look at them. We want to look and see, what is it that you're measuring? What are those pieces of data that you're tracking to determine where your school is headed? Because we want to be able to take you and the trajectory that you're on and ensure that you have the quickest path towards excellence? What are those things that you're working on that are currently helping you move in the direction that you want your school to move in? So the school site visit is really important. We usually ask the principal, mark out this day. It is so important that you spend this day with the assessor, especially if we're able to go to a school that has students in the building. It is so much more meaningful if the principal and I walk into a classroom and we both have the opportunity to see the same things, and then we can come out and we can talk about what are those elements that we're seeing that are part of those foundational standards of excellence for Blue Ribbon Schools. So we look at that and we look together so that we're both seeing the same thing every time we go into a classroom. So after the site visit, we're going to give you a lot of reports. We send all of these reports electronically so that you have an opportunity to look at it, but you're going to have a report that lists all your areas of strength. And I have to tell you, I'm kind of disappointed because most people take that area of strength and they go, oh yeah, okay, fine, and they just put it aside. It's important to recognize your strengths, really embrace those things that you're doing well. We know that you're in this process in order to do better, but really recognize those areas that your stakeholder, this is an area we're doing well, because that is the framework for you to work from for those areas that you want to improve on. We give you a report that gives you nothing but those areas that need improvement. And those are those areas that they're okay, but they could be better. They're not an area of strength yet. And so we give you a report that lists every single one of the areas that need improvement. We also give you a report of things that need immediate action. These are areas that are either scored extremely low because there's very little evidence of it, or this is an area that all of your stakeholders are saying, we really need to do something about this. And as a school principal, and I know for 25 years, if I had something that would have been that one thing that people would have said, hey, this is an area that we really need to work on. We work in an area where we're constantly building people up, but oftentimes we don't take a look at those things that need immediate action, or sometimes people are afraid to share that this is an area they have concern over. But this is a great opportunity when you find out these are the areas that need immediate action. These are some things that we can do something about, and your assessor that works with you will help you in this particular area. We also look at critical areas. In Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence, there are 15 items that are considered critical areas. And if you do not have this as an area of strength, this is an area that we really want you to pay attention to. We want you to take a look at those critical areas, because we know that every school that is a school of excellence has these particular. So we're going to make sure that we hone in on those critical areas if they are not an area of strength. We're also going to take a look at those areas that have no consensus. And you can see sometimes that maybe the administration thinks we're doing really, really well in this area. And then you look at the student responses and the students go, no, we're not. This is not an area of strength. This gives us an opportunity to go, if the administration and the teachers think that we're doing really well at this, but the parents and the students maybe not, we need to take a look at this. This is something that it could be, but it could be from the perspective of that particular stakeholder. We're not really creating that atmosphere that we need to have for our students. We may not be providing that opportunity. So this is a great opportunity to go ahead and settle in that area and look at what we can do to improve it. We also give a student grade level report, and I really love this report because you can almost see trends. you can see that, ooh, there's an area when those ninth graders came in, we may not have shared this information because the ninth graders all reported very low on this area. So you're able to see, do the seniors feel differently about this than the ninth graders? Do third graders feel different about this than fifth graders? So you're able to look and see, and that allows you as a school community to really focus in and decide what you're going to do to help that particular grade level in that particular area. We also give you a report that is just, it's every single item. So all in one place, you get every single item, and it allows you just to kind of look and see what all of those areas that are strength, needs improvement, or immediate action. We also give you the action plan blueprint, and I'm going to show you an example of one coming up. But this is your opportunity to identify who's going to work on this area, timeline going to be, which areas are we going to work on first. But this will take all of those areas that need improvement, critical areas, and those that need immediate action, allow you to put in place an improvement plan that will put you on target to become a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. And then the other thing that we provide are survey comments. And again, these are totally anonymous, but it does let you see things that students say, parents say, teachers say, and those comments that administrators make. So those are great pieces of information to have. So let me give you just a snapshot of what a sample would look like of one of these reports. So this particular, you can see by the blue score of 2.5, this is an area of strength. You can also see by that green, the green rectangle underneath the vision and mission, that this is a critical area. So this particular item is a critical area. You also get to see how people responded in each one of the stakeholder groups. You see going across the page, the administrators, the teachers, support staff, parents, and students. You also see the different responses. So when everyone is given the survey, there are 5 responses. People indicate either that this is outstanding, this is outstanding, this is strong, or this is an area, or perhaps we're not doing this, or I don't know. We look for trends of I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, because that lets us know, especially if we see evidence in the school that these things are in place. This lets us know that there's an opportunity with just a little bit more communication that we can make this an area of strength. Because if we see evidence of something, but people across the board were saying, I don't know, then that means that we've got to make sure that we're communicating better with our stakeholders. Let me give you another example. So if this is an area that we see a lot of times, that this is an area we need improvement. If you take a look at this particular item, it's students show respect to each other. And as you look across the scores, you see that actually for the administration, it's an area of strength. The administration thinks students treat each other with respect. The teachers say students treat each other with respect. But then when you look, and parents think students treat each other with respect. But when you look at the support staff and you look at the students, they're saying we don't treat each other with respect. So what does that look like at your school? Why is there such a difference between those groups, and what can we do to resolve that? Sometimes this would be an area that could be resolved in the student focus group, where we would talk to the students about what are those examples where students aren't showing respect. Is it rampant, or are there isolated incidences? So this is why that site visit and those focus groups are so important, because it allows us to see clearer through the lens of each of the stakeholders beyond what the response is in a survey. So we we talked about all those reports that you're going to get, but your exit session is going to consist of, you get copies of all of these reports, you get feedback from the focus groups, just general feedback, just kind of the trends of things that were shared in the focus groups. You get summary results for each area. I'm going to show you an example of that. You also get your areas of strengths and opportunities for improvement. You get an action plan blueprint, and we tell you what your award eligibility is at this particular point in time. So just quickly, some of the things that you're going to see in these responses. Remember, blue is area of strength. The orange is needs improvement, red immediate action, and critical areas. So if I was looking at one of the summary reports that you would get, this is on school organization and culture. It's just a sample. You can see all of these blue. These are all the areas for this school that these are areas of strength. You can see in this column labeled not met, these are the areas that either are areas that need immediate action, where that one red is. And then you can also see those areas that are critical areas. Those are those components that must be met in order for a school to be considered a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. And you can see on this report, this first critical area is met, the second critical area is met, and there is one critical area yet to be worked on. So we take a look at that. We give you your areas of strength. We also tell you the opportunities that you have for improvement, and we give you your action plan blueprint. And this has each of the areas that you need to work on in order to become a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence. And you can determine your, who you want to work on it, what your timeline is going to be, and then what documentation you have in order to work with your assessor on making that and one of your areas of strength. We also will share with you what your Blue Ribbon Lighthouse School Award eligibility is, how close you are, and what are those areas that you need in order to demonstrate that you are, in fact, able to be considered for Blue Ribbon recognition. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here and see if anybody has any questions. I don't know.
And we have several. I can read them for you, or you can read through them, completely up to you.
Go ahead and read them for me. I would appreciate that, Andrew.
Sure. So our first question comes from Elise. It's, how long does the process take? So this whole process from start to end, what does that look like?
Sure. Well, the whole process in terms of from the day that you say I want to start, we give you, you select your 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks for the survey. Some people extend the survey, and that's totally up to you. And then when we're releasing the survey, we're usually scheduling when the assessor is going to come. So that whole process can, it can take as short a time as a month to 2 months, depending on how long you want to do the survey and when you can get, when you can arrange for the assessor to actually do a site visit. At the conclusion of the site visit, if you decide to have your exit session there during the site visit, you would have all the information you would need at that time in order to move forward on your action plan blueprint. But you would, but oftentimes people will, if we're not going to be there for the exit visit, it would usually be the next day, or just immediately a couple of days later, we would do the exit session with you. Some schools will take that information and within a period of several weeks, depending on how many items they were working on, they can complete the process. We have some schools that say, you know what, this is a lot for us right now, and we're going to take our time. I've worked with schools as long as three years because they really have taken this process very seriously, and they've taken their time and worked through the action steps in such a way that they feel that they're not just checking the box, but they're actually solidifying practices in their school that are going to extend the process. So, we work with schools as long as they want us to work with them, but that assessor is going to stick with you as you work through your going through the process of documenting your work on each one of those elements that needed attention.
Okay, fantastic. The next question is from Eric. Is there a certain response rate needed? And this goes back to the surveys that get pushed out. So in order for your team to do the proper analysis and provide feedback, is there a response rate that you look for?
Yes. Well, sure. With regard to the response rate, statistically we know that 35% is a good random sampling of a response. If we are going to do a random sample, we really want as many of those teachers and students. They're a captive audience by and large. We'd like as many of those. We'd like every administrator and the support staff. But with parents, we know that we usually get a higher response rate on the parent surveys with elementary school than we do with secondary school. And so we work with the schools with as much as possible. We'd like to see at a secondary school of 10 to 15% of the parents. We'd love to see at an elementary school 25 to 50% of the parents. But we also recognize that parents are not a captive audience, and sometimes it's more difficult. We know that parents who respond are going to be on either end of the spectrum. They either have something that they want to say, that they want to point out, that they believe needs to be addressed, or they absolutely love the school and want to tell everybody how wonderful it is. So we know that we're usually going to get that. Those are the people who are going to respond, but we'll work with you, and we would never hold up the process because parents are not responding.
Got it. Next question from Michelle. Do you have to complete each part of the process before receiving feedback?
No. In terms of if you're working through an action plan, we will, we'll set up times. Normally in the schools that I work with, I'll set up a time to go over and establish what that timeline will be. And then as you, and we'll collect items, collect those things that you're going to use as evidence of documentation. Usually I'll set up a Zoom meeting and we'll go through each of those pieces of documentation and either recommend them for validation with Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence as a piece of evidence that would document that particular element. But I will, I'll go through and go through each one of those items and work with folks if there's something additional that's needed. But we usually like to, just for the sake of time, it's very time consuming. If you're trying to get in touch with your assessor every time you document one thing, that becomes stressful for you. So we usually set up time periods. Usually the schools that I work with will reach out to me and say, hey, Jane, do you have some time for a Zoom meeting? I think, we've got a lot of evidence we'd like to go through. And then that way we can be very efficient with our time.
Very good. Next question from Christian. What items must be in place prior to commencing with the application process? So are there any prerequisites that a school should or has to have in place before they can submit an application?
No, there isn't. And thank you. That's a really good question because Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence is a process that ends up in school recognition. We know that there are schools that want to do we need to do in order to become schools. So I've worked with schools that have they're struggling and they realize they want to know what is it that we can do to turn our school around. We've tried everything that we can and we're not there. So we take we take everyone, and you just have to trust the process that will show you where you are on your journey towards excellence, and will take you there until you can be recognized as a Blue Ribbon school.
I think you just answered that with your last response there, but the next question is there a guide or pre-application, like an assessment, we can conduct prior to the application process? So maybe a list of questions they should be asking themselves, something like that.
No, we have on the web the information on the 9 foundational elements, and I think that you can look at those 9 foundational elements, and don't feel like you have to be that you have to be solid on this journey. I've worked with schools that we have. This is where it's a hot mess. I've worked with principals. This is my first year on this campus, and I don't even begin to know where to start. Well, this is a great place to start because it is validated. It is tried and true. We know that this process works. And I've worked with schools that when I walked on their campus, it was, they were struggling. But I've watched those schools go from F schools to A schools to some of the highest performing schools in their state because they followed the Blue Ribbon process. So wherever your school is, don't be afraid to start this process, because whether or not you're on the brink of excellence and you just want to know, hey, are we there yet? Then that will validate that you are there, versus a school that is just going, I just want somebody to come in here and help us because we want to work on, we don't even know what to work on first. So wherever you are in that spectrum, understand that Blue Ribbon Schools, this process is for you, because we can very quickly identify and recognize those schools who are already are further along on their journey towards excellence, but we can certainly help those schools that are just saying it's time for us to begin this journey, and we'll take you there in a very research-based, formative way that will allow you to feel success all along the way.
Great. Looks like we got 2 more questions right now. Next question, again, along the same lines. After you receive the report with improvement opportunities, does a school have an opportunity to improve and then get reevaluated?
Yes. And that your assessor will be doing that all along the way. You can opt to have a survey again, but most of the time we can validate your improvement based on your action plan blueprint, and then we can recognize your improvement.
Okay. And how much does this assessment or application cost?
It does depend on whether or not you are part of if a district embarks on this, the district cost would be less per school than if you do it individually. And that question is above the assessor position, but our CEO, Dr. Judy Warden Fields, will be more than happy to reach out to anyone. If you want to go ahead and tag her any place in this, or if you want to email me, I'll go ahead and put my contact information up. If you email me, then I would be more than happy to pass your email to Dr. Fields, and she or someone in our team can get back with you to give you a price for your particular school.
Okay. Looks like we got about 1 more minute here. I've got 1 more question that's come in. Is there a recommended date for application, a time of year that is better?
No, we do it all year. We'll go up to schools a week before the last day of the school year, and that's been great for those schools to do it because they work all summer on their action plan. I've had schools that have had me come in on the 2nd week of school, and then they have the whole school year. But the only time I would say it's not a good time would be during summer break, because we don't have the opportunity to do that school visit where we can have access to stakeholders. So anytime from that first day of school to the last day of school, we can certainly work with you and work something out so that we can give your school a really clear view of where they are and where.
Okay. Very good.
All right. Well, I think our time is up, and I want to thank everybody for choosing to be with me here on this session. I can assure you that you can't go wrong with the starting the process. I would encourage everyone here to do that, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll see you tomorrow. I'm doing a session on leading from a distance, so I hope I can see some of you there.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jane. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great conference.